Good to have your company on the sounding board for Drinkwise. If you're choosing to drink, choose to drink wise. Here we are, episode 13, this 11th series of this podcast. And Craig Hutchison and Damian Barrett with you. Good morning, Hutchy.
What'd you call it? A podcast?
I think I was going to say program, and then it became podcast, and then it became podcast.
So a podcast is
that could take off, couldn't it?
Podcast, noun.
Could that take off?
A podcast where the hosts tend to prod each other during the production cycle. Fascinating. How are you, Damien? There's been lots happening. We'll
leave it in, all right? We're going to leave that in, okay? We could redo it, but we're going to leave it in.
We're leaving the first attempt to start the podcast today too when the microphone didn't work because the doubly slipped in during the podcast.
Actually, we'll leave that in too. We'll take out, though, the off-air conversation. Can we do that? We've had a few hot mic moments.
We have. Yeah. We've been way too heavy in the hot mics, you and I, over the years. Gee, it's a bit happening again in the world of footy and sport and media. Where do we start?
Well, I want to start
Melbourne.
I want to start with you again, Hutchie, today, because last week you went, and I don't know whether there's a phrase you can use on someone who's been doing this for as long as you have. You went viral last week with the new social media, I suppose, project around this program, and you making some unusual, I should say, comments politically, because you straddle the line when it comes to any form of commentary politically over the journey that I've known you, but you went down a little political path last week. It was clipped up social media-wise, and you took off.
It was a little bit of satire that went viral. But
that's always lost in the takeoff.
I thought Dublin might have got the cartoon done of the Anthony Albanese jerry can walking around in Southeast Asia. Because
So remind people what you said, please.
Just said that if you were a country in Asia and you had the Australian Prime Minister knock on your door, asking for, in essence, a day's supply of fuel per country, which
That's
is what
it was.
What he did.
Yeah. And then celebrated it.
You'd be, in essence, walking around to see if you can get a temporary top-up in a jerry can. And if you were one of those countries who weren't as naturally resourced as ours, you'd think it was a practical joke if someone said to you that the Prime Minister of the most resourced country in the region was knocking on the door saying what they could borrow back off what, in essence, he'd given you in the first place. In some instances, I know that we're not the only supply of oil, but
were you getting comments from other media? Oh, sorry, requests from other media to further comment?
I did. I've got a few people trying to get me to weigh in on the political landscape. So, just for the record, it wasn't a political view; it was a bit of satire.
What
I can rule out a run, Damo.
Can you? Hang on. Do you want to go on record with that?
Can
you want to go on record? Craig Hutchison has denied an interest in politics.
I'd be the first politician ever to get less than 2% of the vote in a mainstream campaign, I reckon, Damo. So I could thoroughly rule it out on a basis of lack of popularity.
Hutchie, I've regularly discussed with you, mostly off air, but I occasionally do it on air, how fascinating it would be for me to see you in a position of genuine power in a sports organisation, be it the CEO of a football club or even the CEO of a major organisation. And I reckon people think you're ready for that being your next step.
No.
I think this is what I feel now, and the perception out there in little old Melbourne town, that you've outgrown this media baron status that you've very, very cleverly worked for now for the best part of 25, even longer, 30 years. You need a challenge soon, and I reckon you're about to take on a major gig somewhere.
No, I can rule that out for you too, Damo. Thanks for the.
Geez, it'd be fun watching you run a footy club or a football organisation or a sports organisation, having to report to government. You would. I'm not
much good at fitting the norm or the box.
No, that's why it'd be fun.
And you'd
revolutionise it.
And doing that with the need for the job would be the worst feeling in the world, I reckon, because I just wouldn't have the ability to temper how I'd want to do it.
Yeah, no patience
under any circumstances. So I would be ill-equipped to do it. Hey, just you mentioned
Melbourne.
You'd
blow it up. And I say blow it up. You'd make it work.
Blow me up first, probably. You mentioned Melbourne. Can I just add our conversation around what's going on with the bar wars at the moment in Melbourne, Damo? Now, it's hard to comprehend this. I don't think it's getting the media in Sydney or Brisbane that it should, because it's a very Melbourne issue. But that speaks a little bit to how desensitised we are as a Melbourne community. Damo, I am absolutely outraged and so frustrated at the attack on Melbourne bars and restaurants that's going on by crime gangs at the moment, and how accepting or desensitised we are to it as a media and as a community.
It's this town, Hutchie.
This is happening blocks from our own homes. 2 blocks down the road in some instances, in your neighbourhood and in my neighbourhood.
To your point about the desensitising of it, there was a report that was about 8 or 9 news items into a news bulletin on the weekend that had shots fired into a Melbourne establishment with people inside it, and it's as though we don't think that's a big deal anymore. Multiple firearms shots into an establishment with people inside, and we don't think that's a big deal anymore.
We're getting standover tactics on bars and restaurants who are being asked to fund the dark market of liquor, buy things that they from a different distributor or supplier that they don't want, and if they don't do it, they're threatened that their restaurant or bar that they work so hard for will be burnt down. And in many instances, that is actually happening.
It has happened,
and that's going on at some of the institutions of our city. So
yes.
our city is built upon entertainment. It is a sports entertainment capital of this part of the world. It's bar culture. It's restaurants are the envy of the rest of the country.
It's about the only good thing remaining, Hutchy, in this otherwise very ordinary operation that is known as Melbourne.
And we are a place where people connect, get together, share a company, share a meal, enjoy each other's presence, and it is at the soul of who our city is. And the fact that that very soul is getting attacked by crime figures who largely hire younger people who...
They're all teenagers again.
Is absolutely outrageous. Our police do a wonderful job and need so much more support and so much more resourcing. And I know that's difficult in this economy, but we need to have their backs as much as they have ours, the police. It's unfathomable that we're not angrier about this as a community, Damo. I don't understand why we're just going, there's another...
You're not meant to
Am I missing something here? Why aren't we just furious about this?
No, you're not meant to look over there. Look over here and we'll give you a $156 rebate on your car registration because it's an election year. And look over here. For the first time in 8 or 10 years, we're going to fill up some little potholes in the roads. Don't look at the bombings in the city, fire bombings in the city.
Yeah, I'm thinking you're politicising, and I'm just actually talking about it as a community or
Hutchy, I don't think it's happening in other major cities in this country at the moment.
They wouldn't believe him if we told them it was, would they?
Well, I reckon they deal with it in a way that's not being dealt with in Victoria.
It has happened in other cities in the past, but
they deal with it.
But in Melbourne, we've got this is the latest thing we've got to go through. Like, when did we get less combative on behalf of our city? When did we not, as a Melburnian, say enough's enough on this stuff?
Well, we deny it. This government has been denying the problem.
Yeah, we've had a different philosophical view on this. You turn it into
they don't introduce a topic as serious as this and then immediately do your stereotype of me. You've raised this again, a political issue, which I think is a very interesting one for this city, and it is political because nothing is being done about it.
I'm saying, as a Melbourne community, as Melbourne citizens, we need to rise up and not stand for it and to rally against it.
What are we going to do?
Well, I think there's lots we can do. And we've already seen a little bit of that early days. I think there's been, I saw a couple of these have been called out by people who've alerted the police, alerted authorities. Clearly we would love to have more police numbers in Victoria than we do.
We had more arrests this week by citizens than we have by the police. And I'm with you on the police. I'm not at all critical of the police because we don't have enough police numbers in this state.
I'm entirely aligned on that. We want to support our police, but we've seen citizens step up and play their role.
But that's not the role of a citizen, Hutchie. That should be a one in a year storyline. It's happening weekly now.
But it's
that we know of, let alone the ones we don't know of.
But we've been through this in the tobacco wars in this city, and we're now having to go through it on another front.
So this is the bikies again, is it? Coming into the... is this the origins of this story?
It's not people of repute, is it?
And just, again, I have seen angles on this particular story. It is a black market offering to these establishments, which have clearly got their own business arrangements legally with reputable organisations to supply their alcohol. But these other organisations are coming in attempting to... shortcut that. Is that what this is all about?
Well, it seems like there's a history of it that's been a bit underground. Like, it seems like there's a degree of nightclubs in particular who just pay the protection money over the years.
Yeah.
I think that's just been relatively commonplace.
Well, you go back to the late 80s, early 90s in King Street and Lygon Street, don't you, when you follow those storylines?
Yeah, and I think maybe it started there, but what we're seeing now is suburban pubs and restaurants attacked in the heart of streets where people live and breathe and raise their kids and walk them to school. Like, if that's not, we're just not actually computing that this has moved into the absolute streets we live in. It's
while people are in them.
King Street's indefensible and shocking. It's one thing. This is just another layer. And you do raise a good point. I mean, we'd ask. We got no expertise in this space at all. Clearly, we're just a couple of muppets with a microphone in front of us, but. I'll speak on behalf of me. I don't mean to call you a muppet, Damo.
I think it's apt.
Stadler and Waldorf, we are. But
On this podcast.
on this podcast. But send us your thoughts on what are some sensible things or practical things that can be done. Like
Actually, I don't think we need
Has
our
anyone
timelines filled with that stuff. No, just send them to Hutchy.
well, but at what point do you want to get involved
Hutchy,
in?
well, this is you reckon you're not political. You are more political than anyone I know. You just like to make out as though you're not. I think you actually are.
I'm just disappointed for our city that we need to go through this, and I'm interested if anyone's got any.
You didn't want to engage in these conversations 5 years ago when I tried to at least raise them with you. Well, now you realise we're in a bit of a
interest in getting involved in politics. I do have an interest in our city.
I don't like swearing, but you've now realised this town's a shithole.
I'm really disappointed in that.
I don't feign this.
Don't
feign this disgust.
I had a conversation on our other Saturday morning radio show, Off the Bench, with a 96-year-old lady called Margaret from Sunbury on the weekend, who just gave me great perspective on life. And she walked through on the show on Anzac Day what it was like in war times, where you had coupons and food stamps, and you had to get a pound of butter, you had to take your coupon down to the corner, and then the lady at the shop would actually, if you didn't need your coupon of a pound of
You'd
butter,
give it to someone else.
and you had letters from people who went to war and didn't know they come back. Like we live in a wonderfully.
Can you imagine the coupons in 2026 if they existed? The bikies would come in and take them too.
Yeah, so we live in a much, much, much better world,
and they distribute it a certain way
than they did then. So I dispute entirely what you said.
I do. Yeah.
But it doesn't mean we shouldn't actually go.
You've just spent 10 minutes telling us how bad the city is, and now you want to grandstand and put it back on me.
It's so difficult to have a practical conversation with you sometimes. I'm talking to you about a specific issue in our city. I'm not talking about our city. I'm talking to you about, are we going to stand for bars and restaurants to keep getting attacked? Do we need to bring in and pass through the parliament some legislation that treats this a little differently and more aggressively? And what as citizens can we do to get involved in help? I don't know the answer, but I just don't want to stand for it. That doesn't mean I'm having a go at my city. It means I'm having a go at something that's happening in the city on behalf of it. It's a totally different conversation we're having. You're trying to politicise the discussion. I'm just trying to practically ask anyone they got any ideas on. Are we just going to read this in the paper every day and go, oh yeah, another one last night, or are we going to get involved?
But it's not specific to that issue, though, is it? Trying to change the laws. I don't think, Hutchy. It's a great need for reform, full stop, wouldn't you think?
And I don't know the practicality of moving laws on this stuff either, other than to say it should be absolutely smashed by the courts and the police system, that if you go near one of our bars, restaurants or businesses, there should be no respite on that. Anyway.
All right. Well, I won't then say what I would sometimes say, because I can understand your frustrations, and I do understand you isolating it.
We live in a great city. We don't live in what you called it.
But Hutchy, the people that are doing these fire bombings, they're let out straight away, Hutchy, and that's another layer of this conversation.
That's a fair part of the discussion.
Yeah, they're let out straight away, and the people organising the crimes know that. So that's it. So I think we'll stop it there, because it did get away a bit waylaid there at the end, but I understand where you're coming from. And let's go to a topic that we have broached a few times and have parked for today's show. That being the issue of crisis communications in all facets of business. We come at this program from a sporting lens, obviously. That's the origins of it. We do branch it out into politics sometimes and other levels of business. But the reason we have been talking about this in recent weeks, Hutchy, has been the extraordinary developments in the story involving the coach in the NFL of the New England Patriots, Mike Vrabel, with a senior journalist, Diana Rossini. Relationships, allegations, denials of relationships, allegations, standing down now of the journalist, Diana Rossini, of the focus of this story. And the standing aside during the NFL draft period of the coach, Mike Vrabel. There are still layers to this story that will play out publicly. There have been some fascinating crisis communications elements to the story already. And given that you have got such an insight into this space, as a lot of people in media do, it's time, I think, Hutchy, to take our listeners through the processes and the stages of these situations. We'll use the Rossini-Vrabel element as the starting point to it. We'll then make it a generic chat. We'll do it maybe quicker than otherwise. But I think people in the public are fascinated by the way these stories play out, and they often don't have more than 10% of a line of sight on what actually happens.
Yeah. So I read that Diana Rossini employed a crisis manager for the 3 days leading up to the story coming out, and knowing that it was going to come out. And the crisis manager is designed to, and it's very common in big problems. We saw Luke Sayers use one last year. We've seen, I think, Anthony Catalano use one. He just sacked his crisis manager. I saw in the paper, which is one of the things I thought, I think I read that. One of the things that made me think we should talk about it as a topic. So what's a crisis manager, for starters, for those who want to peek behind the curtain? Well, it's someone who you ring who's got experience in the flow of media information, and they come in and try and mitigate the damage for you internally and externally on what is coming. And they use their perceived relationships, and strategy. It's a mix of both, isn't it?
Yep.
And Melbourne's got some...
And they're hardened people as a rule, aren't they? They've pretty much seen everything. They've been exposed to so many stories, many of which don't actually make the public eye because this is their role, to keep them out of the public eye. They're never going to be shocked, these people, at the veracity of a certain
They think
story.
their way through. They horse trade. They mitigate. They cut a deal on one or another. They try and leverage anything else they've got going on against that story. Like, they do anything that once... It's like a... sand through the hourglass. Once the sand's tipped upside down, their job's to make sure, come in and just not let too much sand through the hourglass. They've got to mitigate the flow.
So you got to get the facts straight away, the best you can, and you don't have the luxury of time because there's media warning comments by certain points in time.
And there's been some wonderful... my question to you is the crisis manager in 2026 losing their mystique, their power and their relevance at the same level? They're still a very important part of the funnel at the same level that they used to have. I just wondered that when I saw the Diana story again with the Catalano story and others and Luke. There's a few things that sort of modern media works against the crisis manager. I wonder. This is a bit of an out loud conversation. For one, modern media flow of information is harder to stop than ever before. It just seeps in every direction. It's social, it's digital, it's there's everyone's self-publishing. It's very hard to curate that when it happens.
Yep. Then you got the fake accounts which get the traction as well as the reality to the story.
Two is it's harder to know where a story goes than ever before. Like if you'd asked the most people of the most expertise 3 weeks ago where this Diana Rossini story would go, nobody thought it had 20 days of legs.
Unless you delve deeply into why were they at the resort.
Yeah.
And
well, the photo in the bar in New York 6 years ago was the absolute kerosene on the story, and I don't imagine the crisis manager would have known of that picture's existence.
But this is where I want to go back to the origins of this one, because this one has played out. I'd imagine a lot of our listeners would know this story. But the initial denials to me, Hutchie, made this particular story the bonfire that it became, because you had the coach, Vrabel, and he used this word himself. It is laughable. And when someone in the media gets told their reporting is laughable, you go to town to prove that person wrong. So that's an opinion by Mike Vrabel on the initial photos being published.
That would have been against the advice. The crisis manager would have rolled their head and gone, "Oh, I can't believe this." But that was a poke the bear moment that wasn't advised in the process.
But the other element of the initial parts of this story, Diana Rossini too, denied the story, and not just denied the story, said they were there, both people, herself and Vrabel, were there with a wider group. So immediately she's introduced publicly to this discourse other people.
And The Athletic, the publication, initially bought that and said, we've heard the story and they were almost painting it as a sexism story earlier. Like we believe what we've been told. It wasn't until others came forward that they then went to her and said, well, okay, show us the flight receipts of the 6 people and show us the bookings of the rooms and those type of things that she was, and show us the text messages that she was unwilling to then share.
But why didn't the crisis manager at this point demand that receipt?
Well, I think that they'd either been let go by then or had lost complete control of it because they didn't. It just spills out everywhere in a modern world. And the other thing about the crisis manager is, I'm just interested in your views on this. I would think, and you're a hardened print journalist who knew print journalism as good as anybody. You had a 20-year run at this. I was there for 2 seconds. There used to be, let's call it a gentleman's agreement, that the role of the crisis manager wasn't a public one. They were behind the curtain. And the crisis manager would be dealing with the editor and they'd be trying to find a position that suits both parties. Nowadays, they've become a figure in these stories, have you noticed?
Yeah.
Like Sharon McCrowan springs to mind, who was Luke Sayers' crisis manager. And now there's stories about what Sharon said and did in that time.
Yep. And now the fact that she's working at the AFL.
And they end up in another job, and then all of a sudden it's debated, okay, what role, we've seen that person become part of the story, which is, again, a reflection of modern media, which weakens I think part of
the mystique.
Yeah, well, part of the role of the crisis manager is to not have their fingerprints on anything. All of a sudden, fingerprints get taken on the crisis managers in 2026, I think.
Yep. And what I'll always say about these issues, Hutchy, it's so easy for us to talk about this now in a generic sense because we're looking in on it and it's not affecting us personally. When you're involved personally, you sometimes have a different outlook on how you should play something out, don't you, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, you're least...
You're not vulnerable like these people are in these moments.
Don't not seeing the world clearly ever when you're in the caught in the eye of a storm.
But it's easy for us to say this, and I will stand by this element of it. You have to get everything out in an ideal world in these crisis communications moments initially. Put it out initially, because if you attempt to be cute with any aspect of it, that's where it's going to fall apart. And then, as we know with the way these stories play out, it's the perceived cover-up of the initial storytelling that ultimately becomes the biggest story, which is what it is now. Diana Rossini and Mike Vrabel said it was laughable and other people with them. Well, it wasn't laughable and other people weren't with them. So what else have you been lying about?
And then the other quirk in this is historical content.
Yeah.
Now gets analysed like it didn't used to. So, Diana's had to delete her Twitter feed because people are going back over 10 years of interviews that she did with
Mike Vrabel himself.
With Mike
and other comments about her own relationship with her husband.
Was it a reasonable coverage, unreasonable? How'd she get that story? Like all those things. And there's been some horrible social journalism that has been wrongly aimed at Diana, I think, throughout this. But it is clear that now you're leaving a digital footprint forever when you publish something on social.
And then the other one with this specific Hutchie, there will be people arguing, and this is the outcome of a lot of these situations. As we talk here this morning, and we'll time code it Tuesday morning early, which is the time slot we like to do this show in if we both can. Diana Rossini has lost her job out of it.
And
the female
survived.
And the male this storyline hasn't lost his job.
What I said to you 3 weeks ago, I feared how this would land. Was he survives, and
I think you actually said it. Yeah,
and there's no way in Australia that he would have survived that.
No way.
Storm. No way. He would have been gone 10 days ago in Australia, and it's only because of this weird American
private ownership of sports clubs.
That's part of it.
And we need to lay another layer to this too. Robert Kraft, the owner of the team in question, has had his own issues in this space. I'll let people go and make their own clicks on Google to work out what I'm talking about.
Definitely complicates any decision. Yep. No doubt about that. So anyway, but the crisis manager, I'd just be interested in your thoughts on that ongoing.
Yep. But you reckon, okay, just to wrap up this conversation, given we started it with Mike Vrabel and Diana Rossini into it, no way that person in that coaching position survives in Australia.
No way.
Yeah, okay.
The storm would have been too great. And
on what grounds do they? What's the okay? What does the crisis statement read when that moment happens?
We have a media inferno when the ball was a point and should have been a goal, and the arc didn't get it right.
So you won't survive the media inferno.
No chance. No, it would have been.
How's it read?
It would have been the AFL involved, the commission involved. It would have been every social group. Like we are.
Well, that's interesting itself because the NFL, Roger Goodell, only last weekend, while part of the NFL draft coverage, said this is not an NFL issue. We're not using any policies of the NFL to deal with this. This is a club issue.
And we don't have the ability to really
personal conduct
do that here. Hey, Ben Roberts-Smith is a dangerous topic for anyone in modern media.
Yep,
and even at dinner parties, my advice is avoid it at dinner parties because...
Have you gone down that path?
Well, I've been at dinner parties, or I've been at dinners where it's been discussed.
It does get foreign, doesn't it?
And it's the modern-day Lindy Chamberlain story, I think, in terms of how people are going to feel. I don't know the exact percentages, but these are the wrong percentages. Let's call it half the community that are... He accuse him of a crime, yet to be tested again in court, and... he should go to jail.
What's your take on this latest element of it, the criminal side of it?
There's another half of the community that are aghast that Australian soldier and are very angry about that. And so there's just this big rift between the two.
Can I ask you where you stand on this?
Yeah, I'll give you the same answer I give on every single one of these cases.
On the dinner party, you're going to answer this way.
I do fundamentally believe in innocent until proven guilty, but I look forward to seeing it tested in court.
Okay. Can I ask you maybe a deeper question?
When did that become a bad thing to say out loud, by the way?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that just
Yeah.
human courtesy. Like he may be not guilty. He may be guilty. Let the court handle it. But I don't want to wade in on it.
No, fair enough. I'll just give you my reaction to the question I'm asking you.
So you go.
Yeah, I followed this story from a media perspective with Nick McKenzie's involvement in it, and then when it blew up in the civil cases and the backing of Ben Roberts-Smith by Kerry Stokes as much as anything, and then I think the self-damage that Ben Roberts-Smith did by pursuing personally Nick McKenzie and all the organisations, which I can understand him maybe wanting to do, but there's a price to pay for that, and some of the information and evidence in all of those cases ultimately being made public in a way that wasn't going to be the case in the lead up to this. I raise that as background, Hutchy. I have a different reaction to him now with this criminal side of it. And to your point, innocent until proven guilty has always been the facet of it. I didn't like aspects of it. I didn't like the public broadcasting of effectively the arrest being taken off a plane.
Well,
the stage management my opinion being the perceived stage management of the arrest.
That's where I was getting to. So, I mean, the unusual thing about this case is there's sort of three scenarios, not two, right? Normally, they're innocent or you're guilty. There's a third world, which is, well, he did more than he should have. What he did was wrong, but who are we to say how he was feeling or doing or was what circumstances he'd been subject to that led to that? So, like, that's the thing that makes this such a fascinating story from the outside. It's not black and white, the guilt or lack thereof, is it? There's a third world which goes,
how does anyone know that? Third world?
How would I have handled the same situation?
Yeah. And he's in that moment empowered to do things that not many people are.
What is clear is, one, it was entirely unreasonable how he was paraded before the media in his arrest. In fact, in the United States, they've actually introduced laws that you can't do that. It's actually illegal to do it because it does, in the United States legal system's view, taint the jury's view in advance of when the American system got so bad that they've now introduced laws to try and prohibit accused criminals of being paraded before the media in any way to avoid spoiling or tainting a jury. I don't know the exact ruling, but I know there are laws around it. We don't clearly have that here because he could have been arrested in another state, not New South Wales.
Well, he could have been arrested in the car park without a camera, rather than on the plane with his daughters.
The second thing I want to touch on is clearly the defence of him is growing through media now.
Yep.
And I don't know whether that's in line with the way the nation's changing and where the rise of one nation is sort of a pocketed example of the unrest in our Australian way of life. And I suspect a lot of that base are playing into this, defence of Ben Roberts-Smith. But he has, I think, shifted gear a little bit in the way he's defending himself publicly. And let's talk a bit about. So this was how he faced the media last week. He faced the media with, 2 weeks ago it was now, with girlfriend on his hand, a wide shot of, and didn't speak from notes, spoke from the heart. It was a good media performance. Have a listen.
Well, for the past 10 years, my family and I have been subject to a campaign to convince Australians that I've acted improperly in my service in Afghanistan. I categorically deny all of these allegations, and while I would have preferred these charges not be brought, I will be taking this opportunity to finally clear my name. But I would ask that the media please allow my family their privacy at this time, particularly my children, who have already unfortunately suffered through a deliberate, sensational arrest.
So, again, not to cast comment on guilt, innocent, or the other areas of murk on this, that was a better tone, I thought. Did you think, in the way he handled it? He was clear. He didn't look at notes. He tried to speak a little bit from the first lived experience. And it is playing a bit to this base that's growing that defend him.
And quite extraordinarily, Hutchy, about a week after that initial media appearance, which he organised clearly and delivered unbelievably well from a media perspective, then you had the Anzac Day services where he attended himself and he made the commentary, he didn't know whether he should attend with all this backdrop of the charges. But then I've never seen a doorstop of someone in a political nature at an Anzac Day service, and then this followed it up.
I know it's bigger than me. Today is bigger than me. This isn't a day that I think about myself at all, and nor should anybody. It's about remembering every single person that has given us the country that we live in. It's a day that everyone should be reflecting and commemorating the service of all of those Australians that have given us the country that we live in. I personally spend today thinking about families like the Locke family, the Diddums family, the Chuck family, the Pope family, and many more. It's their sons are the ones that I'm thinking about today.
Now, that didn't feel like an organic doorstop. And by the way, in that situation, you'd probably do the same, right? You're fighting for your life or your existence.
Yep.
And I would assume he probably goes, well, it's all right for them to arrest me and publicly parade me. You know, there's a day here that I would argue suits me in my defence, and I'll make it known that I'm there and where I am. And if someone approaches me for an interview, well, then what choice did I have but to offer a view? That would be how he would defend. But this is, moved past a normal legal case now into a PR battle, hasn't it?
Well, we just spoke
do you think that was an organic doorstop?
No, I didn't think it was. No, again, I don't know. Do
you think someone in the background said, you might find Ben Roberts-Smith's going to be at door A on...
I reckon he was apprehensive, though, and I think he had reason to be. Should he actually attend the dawn service, given the clear severity of charges against him pertaining to war actions, their allegations?
And, you'd think if, say, again, I don't know what the public... I don't know if there's been any polls on what side the public are on, but if just say it's 50-50, you'd think that skews further on an Anzac Day ceremony in his favour, right? You think that's a more favourable end of the crowd, people that have got some empathy for soldiers and what they've been through. And I just think he's just starting to shift gear publicly here on how he plays this. He's a fighter, wouldn't surprise you.
Well, I'd argue...
That didn't feel like an accidental doorstop. And it was well pointed out by you.
We just had a conversation of communications strategies and crisis communications people. I don't think he had a great grasp of that aspect of it initially.
I think,
but by taking on Nick McKenzie and others in the civil side of this case, but maybe there's a different perspective in the crisis communications around the criminal side of it.
I reckon he's had a lot of advice from a lot of spin doctors and a lot of lawyers and for a long period of time, and it hasn't served him well. And I suspect he's moved into, I'm going to back my instincts from here on.
So it's all him now, you reckon?
Well, I think he's in complete control of what he wants to say and when and how now. And again, it shouldn't come across as defending him or attacking him.
No, I don't think either of us are doing that.
I have no view. I want to let the courts deal with it. But what I do have a view on is the strategy of the PR side of it. Because he'd been till now he'd been a bit too hostile with the journalists. He'd been, if you think you can just attack journalists who are attacking you, you're not going to win. And that was his early methods seemed to be attack Nick McKenzie, try and get people to get in the way of Nick McKenzie. That's not ever going to work. Now it looks like he's starting to actually play the media at their own game, which is use their airwaves to tell his story in subtle ways. And that, as a strategy, was a good one.
Yep. Been a bit heavy so far. Let's go back to another topic. We got a little bit haywire early on, and I think we both said things we shouldn't have said. But then we'll move on and have a debrief after.
What did I say that I shouldn't have said?
Oh well, you poke and prod me about stereotyping my political allegiance, and you know what, that annoys me. And then I throw it back at you. But anyway, we leave all this stuff on this show.
We talked about media sleeping, so we just.
That's what I want to go to. That's what I want to go to. Let's light that up, because every journo, I think, if you're doing this caper for 15, 20 years, and in our case it's Hutchy, 35 and 30.
We should introduce the reason for this, shouldn't we?
Yes.
The reason we've brought this to the table is because our producer, the double agent,
Sam Watson,
who also produces the top-rating Fireball, Australia's #1 podcast alongside SEN Breakfast, slept in and missed the first 30 minutes of his own show a couple of Fridays
Not
ago.
our show, thankfully.
Now, as an employer, we haven't really had a chance to deal with this at all, so now's as good a time. Now's as good a time as any.
And why are you shifting in your seat there, Sam?
And it's very hard for me to be critical of this because I've done it too. So I was going to share my story to make the double agent feel a bit better. But doubly, first of all, in your young career, how old are you, doubly?
27.
Is that the worst moment that's happened in your career so far?
Definitely.
What time did you actually wake for the 6 o'clock broadcast?
6:07.
Oh. So you missed the start of the show.
Yeah.
And how long did it then take you to, at that time, realise where you should have been?
I woke up to a phone call from Nimsy, and I was thinking, oh, it's weird that Nims is calling me on a Saturday morning.
So you had the wrong day.
That was my initial thought. And then I realised what was happening.
It was a
and
Friday or a Monday.
Let out a few expletives and drove as quick as I could without breaking the law into work.
And did you then get really hot?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a shocking feeling. It was
Sick in the stomach?
yeah, nauseating feeling.
I
I'd say.
don't know you as well as Hutchy, but I'm prepared, Hutchy, on behalf of the sounding board to give a clean slate for Sammy. I have not seen one iota of an issue with Sammy's professionalism and diligence, and I'd like to think everyone, even though he's relatively young in this media caper, I'd like to think everyone's got one excuse in them at this stage of a career.
Yeah, I think you get one sleep in your career that's fair. The second time moves to humour and mocking generally, and with the points made by humour, and then the third time
Out.
It's a conversation, isn't it? I had about a different shift at least.
Or a different job at a different organisation.
And did anyone give you a hard time, or
No, Kane and King had a bit of fun with it, which probably made for good radio, but there was a bit of audio that should have been cut that wasn't, that I'd usually do in the morning, so that made things tricky. But they had a bit of fun with it, but deep down they don't want it to happen again. Definitely.
I had two. The first one I think I've talked about on the sounding board in the past, so I went back over that too far. That was on the State of Origin trip, Victoria playing the Allies in Queensland.
Tell it again, because I think you have told it a few times, but maybe not for 5
I
years.
took the Victorian. I was the advance party for the Victorian footy team, and I went to the establishment nightclub in Brisbane and arranged drink cards and access 24 hours in advance, and then in essence took the entire Victorian team there after the game. And I certainly wasn't out of control or anything like that. I was just there late. I was respectful and responsible, but I was there till 3 a.m. and I was on air at 6. And I remember getting home about 4:30 and thinking, do I go through or have an hour? And I thought
It's a big decision to make at that stage.
Yeah,
and when we're not
have an hour.
downplaying, we shouldn't be in those situations.
So I
But,
thought-
my theory was don't go to sleep.
no, you've always been big on
Just get in a
Well, sure.
shower. Yeah.
So I had the hour, which turned into 2.5 hours. And I missed the 6, the 7, the 6 to 6:30, the 7 and the 7:30 news bulletin, and should have really been sacked that day. I don't think I was, but I should have been. The second one, which again happened at Triple M, I had two at Triple M. That was one at Triple M as the morning, and the second one was worse. The second one,
Have you told this one?
no, I don't think.
Oh, I like these ones.
I don't think I have.
Maybe you've told over a beer, but not into a
Well,
microphone.
maybe we have. I'm the guy that retells every story
You
100
do.
times. So the second one, we had a Saturday morning show called Ralphie and Hutch, which Ralph Horowitz drove. I was the sidekick, but it was Ralph's engine. It was his thing.
That's Triple M, yeah.
And he drove it. He got the time slot up and performed okay. He produced it.
I like that show.
Yeah, I was definitely the support act. That was Ralph running at it and doing what, and he was pretty driven on it. And we ended up getting into 9 till 12 on a Saturday morning. Started 7 till 8. This was maybe 25 years ago, and it was rating evidently pretty well. And they decided to air check us one Saturday morning from Sydney. Like, who are these kids that have, And so they, what an air check is when the boss sits and takes notes. And
Yep.
the Sydney boss is air checking. And Bohemian Rhapsody played in the show, which is about an 8-minute song. And Ralph's anger just grew and grew and grew the length of the song because he thought it was about us time. And so at the end of the song, he went something like along the lines of, "Oh, that'd be right, bloody program directors, 8 minutes of song. Why would you do that to our program?" And he just started attacking management on air a little bit. And they were listening. So we got summoned in Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock, Tuesday 7 a.m. meeting with the boss to be fired. That was the prediction was we were going to be fired at that meeting. I slipped in and missed the firing meeting. I arrived 22 minutes late to be fired from Triple M. That's how bad that year was for me. It was the same year, I reckon. It was about 3 months later. And I turned up, got panicking, got there. And just as I got there, Ralph was walking out of the meeting going, "No, don't bother. It's all over." So I don't know if anyone's ever been slept in for the meeting to fire them before. Like if nothing reaffirms the boss decision that he's doing the right thing firing you, I didn't even find a way to get there on time. I slept in and missed the firing meeting. I'm going to say it was 1998, 7, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Only 30 years ago. So, Double, if it makes you feel any better, and the reason why I've been a bit more tolerant than perhaps you might have thought I would be.
Thanks, Hutch.
I relate to it. And you know
Much
what?
appreciated.
30 years later, I'm still telling stories about it. So it does stick with you. You learn from it. It did get me sharpened up, Damo, and up early and do the work, as they say.
I've got a bad one, and I don't think I've told this either, but 2000 Sydney Olympics, pretty punishing schedule for a number of reasons, and great time to be a journalist in this country, wasn't it? Had the task of ghostwriting Jai Turima's column leading into
Jumping Jai
Turima, the long jumper, the great long jumper.
Yeah.
And
Did you really?
Yeah, so in the lead up to it, he'd
He was
write
a sensation during that time.
he's a fantastic guy and a bit of a
You
renowned party goer.
You were at ghostwriting great, weren't you? You got some ghosting jobs.
Had a few over the journey. Actually, we can talk about ghostwriting another stage of our conversation. But so had the lead-in columns, which he wrote. Basically, we had all the information. You put them together, and it was a good little series, which a lot of athletes are doing in the lead up to the Olympics. Then he had the moment where he came second to Pedrosa, and it was one of the great nights of athletics and great nights of Australian TV with him coming second and Dave Colbert. Time to fly, Jai.
Those columns really set the bar high in Australian journalism
Didn't
at
they?
the time.
Yeah, they were good. So just had to wrap up the achievement. I get it, Hutchie. Had to wrap up the achievement with just one final column at some stage of like the 2 or 3 days after he came silver. So a big night. He was a known celebrator at the time and may have gone along with him for a little bit with the ride. And we'd arranged to meet the next morning at whatever it was, 10 or 11 o'clock outside this place. Now, I don't know whether he actually turned up. There was every chance he wasn't going to turn up, but I do know that I wasn't where I was meant to be at that point in time, which became a problem in the hours and days after it. Could not get him. Having almost spoken to him daily for 6 months.
He vanished.
He vanished because he'd won his silver medal and he was off. And as we know, he's almost gone. So had to use extraordinary coercive powers to just get another half hour with him. Finally, had to go through his management.
And he missed your moment.
I don't know whether he was there himself, but I know I wasn't. And I
did
did
management know that you weren't there? Or did you get covered up by Timsy or someone like that?
I was economical.
Timsy was the guy that
I
covered
was
all those things
economical
up.
with the truth, trying to explain to my bosses.
Economical with the truth.
In trying to explain to my bosses why this series of columns wasn't being wrapped up with the only column they really had paid for or wanted in the entire series, that being the one that reflects on the silver medal. But anyway,
And you got him in the end.
Got him in the end, but it was the moment had gone. Like it was 3 or 4 days after it. It had to be done that day. And
It's hard to explain this. It's like being on a plane which is falling from the air, the sick feeling of sleeping in, isn't it? Your stomach just churns in a way that you couldn't curate or control.
I just get hot in those moments. Thankfully, they don't happen too often, Hutchie. But anyway,
I was working a little bit too hard day and night in those days. I was 5 a.m. till midnight every day, and I was 7 days a week, and I wasn't equipped for it, Damo.
No,
but.
And am I right in saying too, your punctuality in those days wasn't what it is now? I would argue for the 15 years, you are punctual right now, as in this recent. Maybe back then, maybe not.
Learnt lessons early and got to get work ethic and organisation. It does light a fire in you when you have a blow like that in your career, I reckon. So
yes. Actually, it can sharpen you right up.
As Maxwell Smart would say, doubly, use that lesson for niceness rather than evil.
I'll keep that in mind.
So doubly's okay after all that?
Doubly's fine.
Good. Might leave it there, you reckon?
Yep.
Yeah. A few other topics, but they're a bit heavy, and we started heavy and stayed heavy. And
is there anything else we parked? We're going to talk about Western Sydney and how to fix it at some stage. We'll do that next week.
That's been parked for a couple of weeks. Yep. That's got the parking tickets on it. We'll have to get to that next week. We'll do that, doubly. We'll flag that, and we'll do it on the sounding board for Drinkwise. If you're choosing to drink, choose to Drinkwise.